So to introduce ourselves, I am Sarah, this is my colleague David from FK. We also did want to acknowledge our other colleague Jessica Lee, who was instrumental to this project, but she's based in our Brisbane office, so couldn't be here today. Before we start, we did want to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. We did also want to acknowledge and pay our respects to the Bunurong and Bunurong people on the land on which our project sits.
So the Alba is part of a greater aged care and retirement living precinct by Australian Unity, our client. They existed in this building from the 1970s up until kind of around 2015 when they came to us for this project. The building itself was obviously a very sculptural and strong building that they occupied for 40 years. They looked at the site adjacent to where the Alba sits now, and that became the Grace, which was a 18-storey independent living apartment building, and that was a project that was finished in 2019. So you can see this Alba is the kind of main building. You can see the Grace was to the south of that. And I guess the impetus for retaining that building and reusing that structure and the facade was primarily because there was no available extra height, so there was no benefit to actually demolishing that building. There's a wonderful story about that heritage and the retention of their own building, their own office, and then that transformation into a new development for them. As a result, there was a relatively straightforward planning process because much of the work was done internally, and part of that kind of change from an office building into an aged care building.
So this is the precinct as it stands today. So on the left-hand side is the Grace, the retirement living building that David was talking about, and then on the right-hand side is the Alba, which is the assisted living apartments and aged care apartments within that existing building. Along the ground plane, we'll talk to this in more detail. There's obviously the residential entries, but there's also F&B spaces and community wellness space that offers wellness services to the community. So this is a section cut exactly through the direction that we were just looking. So the Grace retirement living or independent living units on the left-hand side. This amazing kind of central void or light well was created then between the two buildings, the new on the left and the existing Alba on the right-hand side. To talk to the public uses then in the building, the ground plane, which we'll talk to in more detail, but that is actually a public and active ground plane with that community wellness service offer. There's a cafe which was designed with sibling architecture and FK on the ground floor. There's family and gathering spaces throughout the building, and there's also a rooftop restaurant at the top of the building. So just to set up really the framework, this project is really about breaking down some of the stereotypes in aged care and this interesting dichotomy or way of thinking about aged care, which is typically quite a private and secure model. And this project with Australian Unity really sought to break open that model and start to get an increased level of public activation and engagement through things like that ground plane, F&B spaces throughout the building, aged care rooms and spaces where family were actively encouraged to visit, and then other wellness spaces. This is just a view, again, looking at as a precinct how that comes together. So David spoke about the existing building, and this is the original or the existing building floor plate when it was commercial use by Australian Unity. all of the facade was retained. It was structural, as well as all the structural columns and the core within the building itself. So there were obviously also exciting challenges to adapt that to residential units, which is what this new plan starts to explore. So this is a typical level. To the right-hand side is a typical neighbourhood, which Australian Unity really developed a new model for aged care neighbourhoods. We cut voids open at key levels. We also looked at introducing balconies to have that external access to natural light and ventilation. On the left-hand side, this is showing a memory support or dementia care household. So again, there is that dichotomy between highly secure versus public spaces. This is a section through, so the right-hand side neighbourhood. The neighbourhoods were designed really across 3 level sections, and I'm going to go faster, but the purpose of cutting through these voids in the floor plate was to encourage social connections between residents and family and visitors. So that's visual, sensory, audible, but also olfactory and smells between kitchens. So this is the ground floor plane. The ground floor was lowered to street level. Previously it was raised above ground with stair access. This was obviously critical to thinking about the cohort, the need to be on grade at the street, but also to encourage that intergenerational connectivity. The cafe is on this level.
A quick mention, if I may, Sarah, on, if you go back on side, the artwork that you can see through the front there was a program set up with Australian Unity that looked at mentor and mentee First Nations artists as well. And it's created a wonderful kind of point of difference for the facade.
So, on the left-hand side, this is one of the rooftop F&B gathering spaces. There is a signature Curtis Stone restaurant on the rooftop, so that's open to public and events. On the left-hand side, the right-hand side, this is an image also of the rooftop. Working with the existing conditions, the location of the core created some quite tight spaces, but we used those and thought about them as interstitial perching, dwelling, observational spaces. These are some of the communal spaces. There was a real consideration around families, but also children. So the common areas include cinemas, games room, family and lounge rooms. And then this is one of the aged care suites. So another thing that was really important, we know the importance of observation for aged care residents and having that visual observation opportunity out to community and activity externally. But the rooms were also designed to be larger than normal so that they could accommodate and support visiting families, built-in joinery, dining spaces. So it really was the final piece in the coming together in this wellness and community health and ageing in place precinct.
That's your last.
That's it. That's it. Thank you.